All right. So on tonight's show, we're going to start off with the latest episode of Star Trek Picard. We are going to start by talking spoiler-free. So no spoilers here at the beginning. We're just going to talk about general impressions from the show. Please, those of you in the Rogues Gallery, please feel free to chime in. But again, please avoid spoilers at this point. And then when we get into the spoiler talk, you'll see a banner there across the bottom, and it'll say spoilers, and you'll know it's okay to go crazy. And then we have something interesting we're going to actually try out tonight during the spoiler portion of the discussion of Picard. So tell me, Eric, what were your initial impressions of the latest episode of Star Trek Picard, Broken Pieces?
Well, what can I say? I always feel like I'm in the same position when it comes to this show. But I'll say this right off the bat. Broken Pieces was a perfect name for this episode. It was absolutely a perfect name because I feel like this is a broken show with broken people. You know what I mean? And it's broke. So once again, I've harped on this quite a bit. The uneven tone of this show is just mind-boggling to me. It is so uneven in both pacing and tone. There were times where I was practically falling asleep during this episode because it was taking so long for anything to happen. I literally think there was only 2 things in this episode of any consequence, and the rest of it was almost complete and total fluff. Complete and total fluff. My favorite character, Raffi, is very prominent in this episode, so that didn't help. She's very prominent in this episode. Doesn't really do anything, but she's very prominent in this episode. I thought, I'll get into that more in the deep dive, but I thought the way they handled that was just incredibly cheesy and contrived. But yeah, the unevenness of the tone of the show in terms of going from something very serious, very dark or very depressing to just like basically dad joke level humor is just it's just so weird to me. And I feel like these are like stories kind of like almost like just sort of piled on top of each other, and they don't really work, you know, as a cohesive story. But they kind of force it down our throats anyway, you know. Katie has joined us, and she says, hashtag Planet Raffi. So yeah, I'm a big Raffi fan, as any of you viewers know. Yeah, I'm a huge Raffi fan. But yeah, the uneven tone is what really gets to me. Like I said, the pacing I think is weird. I mean, literally not very much happened in this episode, and this episode was almost an hour long. And it's funny because I remember kind of being critical of The Mandalorian because I thought some of the episodes were too short, and I felt like I wasn't getting my value. But I'm starting to realize The Mandalorian actually did a much better job because this episode could have been 20 minutes to get the pertinent information that you needed. It could have been actually 15 minutes probably, if that, because so little actually happened, you know. It's a lot of cheesy dialogue. Oh my gosh, one of the lines, jeez, I'll get into that in a spoiler. I mean, cringe-worthy dialogue. And Chabon is like a Pulitzer Prize winning author. And it's like, is he really willing to put his name on this crap? You know what I mean? It's like some of the dialogue was so bad. And of course, more cursing. We're back to the cursing. It's too much contemporary stuff. You know what I mean? That doesn't make any sense to me. I'll get into that in the deep dive. But yeah, again, I just feel like it's so uneven in tone and pacing. But what do you think, Dave?
I'm of the opinion that I'm officially have decided that unless something really interesting happens soon, I'm probably not going to be back for season 2 of Picard. I'm pretty much there. I love Star Trek very much. It's a very important part of my childhood, my life, whatever. But this show's about done it for me. I'm looking for ways to cut so I can put more advertising budget into the show. CBS All Access, you might be out of here pretty soon. So I mean, honestly, and this is the episode. Like, there was some stuff with 7 I really enjoyed, but all I could think of is like, why didn't we do some of this stuff maybe a little sooner? Like, and I like Rios, and it was like some of the stuff with him was kind of fun, but overall, I didn't really care. I didn't really care for this episode. I mean,
without getting into the spoiler, because we do find out what happened to Rios. We find out basically why he left Starfleet. Now, without telling people what we found out, what did you think of that? What did you think of that scenario? Did you like it? Did you think it was compelling and great, or what?
I thought it was unfortunate and sad, and I didn't quite understand why it went down the way that they described it. Without getting into spoilers, I was just sort of like going, "Okay, that's why."
I thought it was terrible. I thought it was terrible, and it's another slap to Starfleet and the Federation and all that kind of stuff. We'll get into it in the deep dive, but I was really kind of upset about it, and also the way that it comes out. It's like, that was just so contrived and silly. And again, I'm like saying, you know what? I'm going to 10 minutes now. I think I'm going to keep going down. I'm going to end up like at 5 minutes. We could have had what we needed to know in this episode. We could have gotten in 5 minutes. The way we got it was just like pulling teeth. It was so long. It was so boring. It was so contrived to me. You know what I mean? Again, the pacing problem. Katie says, Chabon hates Janeway. Don't expect class, because she was the epitome of class. And I know Katie is referring to comments that Chabon actually made about not really being a fan. I can't remember the way he phrased it exactly, but he basically didn't really like the Janeway 7 dynamic, and he had the gall to say that, because somebody actually kind of pitched him the idea of a 7 spinoff. That's the way I remember the context. A fan pitched him like the idea of a 7 spinoff with Janeway, and he was all like, "Yeah, we actually kind of joke half," and he said half joking, without the Janeway. You know what I mean? About doing like a 7 spinoff, but yeah, no Janeway. I don't really like her. You know what I mean? So yeah, Katie. And there is not a whole lot of class in this in this episode or any other episode of Picard. Again, the F-bombs, unnecessary, takes me out of the world.
Totally. I hated that. I hated that so much, the way they did that. I mean, hasn't that character technically said that to Picard twice now?
Yeah.
Was it once enough? Do we have to have that character say that to Picard twice?
And that's like the definition of gratuitous. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, you had your little shock moment. Now it's not even shocking. Now it's just stupid. It's just lazy. You know what I mean? It's not even shocking anymore, because we know how she is. We know how this character is. We know how they write now. You know what I mean? We have a couple more comments here. manofsan says, directed at Katie, I agree that Kate Mulgrew did a very classy job as Captain Janeway. And I don't disagree. I would say Voyager is actually probably my least favorite classic Trek. In fact, I can say that pretty confidently. It is my least favorite. And Janeway is not one of my favorite characters, but I do think Kate Mulgrew did a great job. I don't think that she's a bad actor or anything like that. I do think she had a lot of class. And we are lacking that in this show. We really are lacking that in this show. I think she's a great actress. And like I said, I'm not a huge Voyager fan. I actually really like 7 and Tuvok, and I also liked Kes. I also liked Kes quite a bit. But Tuvok's probably my favorite. He's right there with 7, and I think they're actually very similar. 7 and Tuvok, I think, are actually very similar in a lot of ways. And so those are my favorite characters on Voyager. So we have another. It says, Kitty says, another boo to authority, establishment, and uniformity, aka Starfleet. Exactly. There was a lot of that in this episode. There was a lot of that. There was a lot of more like, Starfleet sucks. They're corrupt. You know what I mean? This is not Gene's Starfleet. This is not Gene's Starfleet. It's just not. It's not Trek. That's because it's like, that's not what Starfleet's supposed to be about. That's not the way they're supposed to roll. Yeah. And then Katie did kind of clarify what Chabon said. He said the dynamic. He said it wasn't compelling, and he said Janeway did nothing for 7 years. That is pretty bold of Chabon to say something like that. I've mentioned this before. You do not need to crap on what came before you to show how good your thing is now. And I hate it. I hate it when they do that in a franchise. When they try to say the newest thing is the best. Okay, best is subjective. Okay, but when they try to do that kind of hype and just that lack of respect for the shoulders that they're climbing on top of and literally standing on as they're making these statements, I don't know. I don't know what he's trying to do. I really don't. It's kind of like Kurtzman, when he went out and said, "Oh, I never liked Trek," and this is the guy who runs Trek now. I never liked it. I like Star Wars, just like JJ said that too. I never really liked Trek. I like Star Wars, and you can just see it. I mean, they are deconstructing these characters. They are deconstructing Trek. That's what they're really doing. They are taking it apart and ripping it from the inside out. You know what I mean? Because this doesn't feel Trek. This show does not feel Trek at all. manofsan says, I feel that this show is ripping off ideas from other shows. The profanity from Admiral Clancy is probably trying to imitate. And I don't know that. I apologize because I don't watch The Expanse. I don't know that name. Avasarala? It's a character from The Expanse, and I have been told The Expanse is very good, but The Expanse is on Amazon, isn't it, Dave? Does that sound right?
Yes, I think so. Sorry, my mic was muted.
No problem. By the way, we're starting to get used to that of kind of like, taking our mics off and stuff like that. And but the thing about that is with The Expanse, I don't have Amazon Prime, so I don't have the ability to watch it right now. I've heard it's very, very good, and I don't know. Maybe in the future we'll try to tackle that. You know what I mean, as a review or something like that. Especially if we get more viewers or listeners that are interested in that. You definitely can send us suggestions about what you think we should watch, and especially if you're like, you feel bad for us because we hate the show. You can be like, hey, maybe you would like this, because that would be nice. It'd be nice to review something that I'm actually enjoying. That would be a lot more fun, But I'm also okay reviewing stuff that I don't like. I don't have to like it. I look at this as I look at this as like a job. So I think that it's I don't have to like it, but you can always suggest something as far as something that we might want to tackle, and then Dave and I can discuss it.
And I was just going to say, our second topic tonight is something that's a lot of fun. So, like our second main feature topic tonight. So, and I was just going to add, I quite like Janeway. I did enjoy her character a lot, and she's way more of a classic Star Trek character and a captain than anything we got going on in Picard so far. That's for darn sure. And I ironically have been reflecting on, I'm not terribly dismissive of Voyager. I mean, I liked Voyager. I didn't love Voyager, but Voyager is a far superior Star Trek show compared to Picard.
Absolutely. I don't disagree with that at all.
And
Voyager still has the spirit of Trek.
Right.
So
and I'm coming to appreciate Voyager more and more, because it seems like we are running from classic Trek, and I'm like going, man, Voyager was a pretty good show. I'm actually thinking about revisiting Voyager, because Picard has really made me think I need to rethink my opinions on some of these shows. And just so Katie knows, my mom Jane is actually in the chat. So I'm going to try and watch my language tonight. But my mom's nickname was actually Admiral Janeway, because her name is Jane.
Oh.
And she quite liked Voyager back in the day too. So we've actually got quite a few Voyager fans probably in the chat right now. So
yeah, that's good. I mean, the show does have 7 in it. You know what I mean? And I'm sure that's why they're watching it. And then Katie mentioned Janeway and Seven's bond is why she's a fan. Says that they helped me through. They helped me so profoundly as a young woman. The breaking of their bond will make me stop being a fan. And I've actually mentioned to Katie, like on Twitter and stuff like that, because we've had some good exchanges. I'm at the point, it's like, Katie, you do not want Janeway in this show. You do not want Janeway in this show because they will destroy that character. I mean, it seems like that's their mission. You know what I mean? So it's like, you don't want your fan. Think if you were an Icheb fan or a Hugh fan, look what they did to them. You know what I mean? So, I mean, do you really want your character in this, your favorite character in this? I don't. You know what I mean? I'm happy that William Shatner doesn't seem to have any ambition to be in the show. You know what I mean? Because they'd find a way, because I'm one of those people that doesn't really like the Kirk death. They will find a way to make it worse. You know what I mean? Even if they'll bring him back just to kill him and somehow make it worse. You know what I mean? Than it was in Generations. That's my opinion right now. And then also manofsan, as far as suggestions, he said The Expanse and The Witcher are two shows I enjoyed recently. And I think, Dave, we actually did talk about possibly doing The Witcher at some point.
Yes, we have discussed it, and I think it would be worth definitely visiting. Might be fun to do an episode by episode. We could watch the first episode and see how we feel about it. That would actually be something fun. It would give us something to replace like Picard with, like our opening show thing. You know what I mean? I think it's worth looking into for sure. Yeah, because we have talked about it. So,
and we have someone new that's joined the chat, Ayako1Sato. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct, or Sato, right? Ayako1Sato, Ayako 15.
It could be Sato.
No, there's a number in there. All right. Anyway, sorry if I'm butchering your name. Says, I know I'm 3 episodes behind, but Elnor to me is the most Trek to me. He has the same sweet, naive quality like Data, even though he's a killer. Everything else is jaded and bitter. And I would agree with you there. I think he is probably the most optimistic, and it's because of his naivete. You know what I mean? Because he's so naive. I would agree with that. He's probably like the most Trek character, and actually, I guess that's a good segue because he does do something. You see it right off the bat, right? With his appearance. I think that's a good segue into spoilers. You know what I mean, as far as Elnor's role in this episode. And you think that's a good segue into spoilers, Dave?
Yeah, that's a good segue into spoilers, and I want to welcome our commenter to the Rogues Gallery. Again, just a reminder, we are giving away this original art sketch card tonight on the show for people who comment in the comments, or our Rogues Gallery, as we call them. This is an original art sketch card. The art is by me. This is from Arrow Season 4. Until it's official, a little hollow foil there undercover. This is Beaty from Arrow Season 4. I want to welcome you to the Rogues Gallery. Again, please be over the age of 18 and U.S. shipping only, unfortunately, because I have extra paperwork to fill out, and I'm just not into that. I'm not into paperwork.
And that's all to encourage you people to join us, to join the conversation, because we love your comments. We like to respond to your comments. Whatever your opinions, all views are respected here. If you love the show, tell us why you love the show. Interesting to hear that.
I would be interested to hear it. I really would. And I'm not, I like I said, there's been episodes I've enjoyed. And there were things about this episode that I had a little bit of fun with, but overall, I wasn't just a big fan of this particular episode. That's for darn sure. So,
well, let's get into the deep dive. And as we were talking about Elnor, that was sort of like another kind of Trek moment. You know what I mean? Where we had the reintroduction of Seven. Seven came back to the show, and the first thing Elnor does is hug her. You know what I mean? Now, granted, they don't really have a history with each other, but Elnor being as naive as he is, I kind of bought it. You know what I mean? Because they showed that he is very naive and all that kind of thing.
I would say even further. You have to remember that he grew up being raised in that sisterhood, basically that coven, or what do you want to call them, of warrior nuns. So, and because they believe in absolute candor, that might have been genuinely what he was feeling in that moment, and he would not have the same filter or hesitance or whatever, because he considers her a friend, and sort of like, I'm so glad you're here. I mean, I think it totally fits with his character, given his background, in my personal opinion. So
what I was a little bit like, I don't know. I don't know if the word is sad. I don't know exactly what the emotion was, but Seven kind of looks almost disgusted. You know what I mean? That he hugs her, and on the one hand, yeah, I kind of see like, well, she doesn't really know him that well, but she did just save the guy's life. You know what I mean? And it just kind of shows that jadedness. You know what I mean? It's like because you can see you can see the direction that Jerry Ryan was given clearly. It was like, yeah, don't act like this is a good thing. You know what I mean? You're too cool for that. I could hear the director's words. You know what I mean? In my head, what they were telling her to do, because that's what we got. And it's like, why can't Seven just be nice and give him a smile and all that kind of stuff? You know what I mean? She kind of does. She warms up a little bit. You know what I mean? As she kind of, I think, realizes. You can kind of see the process. Jerry Ryan's a good actor, very good actress. You can kind of see that she kind of does mellow out a little bit. But to me, the very first reaction on her face was almost like disgust. And I like, why is this guy hugging me? You know what I mean? Well, you just saved the guy's life, right? So
right.
It is what it is. Oh, and and I'm very sorry if I am butchering your name, Ayako. But she actually participates in the same thread that Katie and I sort of met on, which is the hashtag
All Star Trek.
All Star Trek for heroes and icons. And I really appreciate you being here and checking out the show. I've been asking her to check out the show, so I really appreciate it. And I am so sorry if I'm butchering your name. But I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're commenting. And we do have a new kind of segment that we're going to be doing with our spoilers. So this is going to be sort of our soft premiere, if you will, of a new concept that we're going to have on the show. And we're going to bring this back periodically, hopefully, once we get the kinks worked out. We may have more panelists with this, but basically what we are introducing is the Rogues Writers Room, okay? So what we're going to be doing as we're going to go through the deep dive of the episode. And then once we're done with some of the deep dive and kind of going over the episode, we're going to actually try to rewrite this episode so it's actually good. All right, that's what we're going to do. All right, that's the plan. And like I said, as we evolve this new segment, we're going to try to do it with other shows, movies. Hopefully, we'll get additional panelists. We hope to do like we're hoping by the finale to have this kind of tight, and that we can make it a full segment on its own, where we just do the Rogues Writers Room. So we're kind of going to introduce that concept tonight. And we'll take your pitches too, because basically the way it's going to be is I'm going to kind of be the studio. So I'm going to set up a few parameters, because it's not anything goes. I'm going to set up a couple parameters as if I'm the studio, a couple rules. There's a couple things we got to accomplish here. And then it's going to be up to us and the viewers. Obviously, you can pitch things to us as well. Dave is going to be the showrunner. So Dave, basically Chabon has been fired. I'm essentially Kurtzman. Okay, I'm going to set up a few rules. And then Dave is going to be the showrunner, so he ultimately has the yes and no power of, yeah, we could do that, we're not going to do that, if we get suggestions. So we'll see how this goes. Again, we're going to kind of introduce this. This is sort of a soft introduction because this is the first time we're trying it, and then we'll get into it as we kind of get past the real deep dive of the spoilers and everything like that.
Very cool. And I actually have served as an editor, and I did used to run my own publishing company, so I am quite familiar with saying that's a great idea, and I don't know about that.
Yeah.
So,
and I was the editor on the project we collaborated together. I was the editor on the Occupants comic book tie-in. You were the artist, and I was actually the editor of that project. Yeah. So that was actually pretty fun, because our director of Occupants, he's the one who ended up writing the script. And he didn't know anything about comics, so it was an interesting process to try to help him figure out comics as opposed to movies. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's a good memory. And but anyway, that's kind of where we're going. And it sounds like we already had. Yep, manofsan already said that he thinks it's a great idea. Rogues Writers Room seems like a stimulating idea, and that's what we're going to be trying to do. Hopefully, it will be stimulating and not like a train wreck. But that's the hope, So
very cool.
And then Bobby Chambers says, fantastic.
Yeah. Awesome. Very cool. Very cool.
And Katie says, music to my ears. Chabon has been fired. That's right. Dave is taking over. He's taking over as showrunner for Star Trek Picard in our writers' room scenario. So let's start with the beginning.
And I'll start off by just saying this again. Unbelievable on Netflix is a fantastic show. Chabon helped create that, and he wrote quite a few of the episodes. So he is a talented writer.
No, he's a Pulitzer Prize winning writer. I
don't know where.
Let's get right into it. We're in spoilers.
So.
Who wrote the line? I'm done murdering. I'm done murdering people. Who the hell wrote that line? And the delivery was so pathetic. I mean, that was so cringeworthy. I'm done murdering people. Who wrote that?
I have no idea.
Pulitzer Prize winning writer, you wrote that? You wrote that dialogue?
I have a feeling that might have been a note from someone. I don't know. It was really bad. I'm just saying I've seen Chabon do some amazing stuff, and this show is not a I don't know. It's not good.
It's not a good reflection of his writing.
No,
it is not.
No, it is
because
not.
Some of these lines are terrible. Some of this dialogue is totally awful. The F you know what I mean? The F you with Picard. Where does that come from? That same admiral, once again, Picard's in the middle of talking, and she basically tells him to shut the F up.
Yeah.
Who is this admiral? You know what I mean? Like, talk about a lack of class. And this is an admiral. You know what I mean? And she's talking to a retired admiral, you know?
Right. Well, let's do a spoiler. Let's do a spoiler talk, because one of the first things I want to do is I want to recast this character with a legacy Trek character and make it more interesting. That's the first thing I want to do. That's the first thing I wanted to do. I want this lady out of here, and I want us to take some suggestions and see if we can't find somebody better to replace that character, because I'm sick of her. All she does is curse. I'm ready to get her out of here and recast that character. So, somebody else.
Bobby's already given us a pitch, and he says, "Just so you know, I'm going to try and kill Raffi constantly." And he says, "If Dave doesn't beat me to it." Ha ha ha.
All right, cool.
But
so
let's start at the beginning of the episode. So, because we want to go through the episode. So, we have another flashback, 14 years earlier, and we get to see a little bit more about the Super Tal Shiar, otherwise known as the Zhat Vash, and why they hate synths. To be honest with you, I didn't really even think that was really necessary to really establish. I mean, I didn't even think it was really necessary to even go there, but that's what they do. So they tell us what happened with the Zhat Vash, why they hate the synths, which the reason is apparently they went to some planet from some other culture, and they discovered sort of like a memory well, a den of memories, if you will, that you can interact with, I think by touch. You touch it, and then you get the memories, you get the information from this previous culture. And apparently, it's the way that I took it. It was very Ron Moore, Battlestar Galactica. It was this sort of idea that that there's this sort of cycle that civilizations go through, and this society is warning future generations kind of not to make the same mistake they did, which is, of course, they made artificial life. So that's where we're going. We're going straight Battlestar Galactica revival here. So the motivations of the Zhat Vash, otherwise known as the Super Tal Shiar, which is all women, by the way. They're all women. So I didn't understand that. I guess it's supposed to be like the evil version of the Romulan nuns, the warrior nuns, I guess. I don't know. I didn't understand why they were all female, but they're all female in the Zhat Vash. And apparently they did this little stream of consciousness. They interacted with it, and most of them were so horrified by what was revealed, they killed themselves. So that's how that's like our first scene. We see these people graphically killing themselves, shooting themselves in the head. One lady's like literally ripping her own skin off. And the only survivors are, as Katie says, Commodore Ono. That's actually how I remember the name. Katie, thanks for that, by the way. So it's Commodore Ono. And then there's what is it? Cersei Romulan. You know, the sister from the Zhat Vash, Cersei Romulan, and the girl that the character that we found earlier that Soji interacted with, which was the Romulan the female Romulan who was crazy because she was one of the last people that the Borg tried to assimilate. And also what apparently this establishes, we find out why the Borg cube broke. And it was because of her. Because apparently when they tried to assimilate her, it broke the Borg, which I thought was really stupid. I think that's an incredibly stupid idea. That, you know, it's this idea, I guess, it's like this thought is so terrible. This vision is so bad. It broke the Borg. It broke the Borg, you know? And I thought that was really, really silly. So these are the only three that survived. I think there were like 12 of them, I want to say. Only the three of them survived and were able to process the information without killing themselves. And of course, now one of the circle of these three, she's gone crazy because the Borg tried to assimilate her and it got all botched. It broke the Borg. It literally broke the cube. So we get past past that. We're back on the ship with Picard and Rios and the gang. And they're trying to kind of catch, you know, bring Picard up to speed because Agnes, right? Is that the scientist girl?
Yes, Agnes Girardi, yep.
Because in the previous episode, she tried to kill herself in part to try to get rid of the tracker. And we have a comment. Yeah, wait, how can you break the Borg? You mean broke the Borg cube or the species? The cube. It's the cube. They've actually said behind the scenes that the Borg are still the Borg. This is just one cube that's broken. So they don't say that in the episode, but the producers have said that off screen that the Borg are still the Borg. Apparently, what happened at Endgame had no actual lasting effect, which I think is, again, maybe that's because Chabon hates Janeway. You know what I mean? I don't know. But apparently that had no effect. So it's just the one cube that got broken through this process of trying to assimilate this Romulan woman, and it causes the ship to break. So we're back on the ship with Picard. They're trying to bring up to speed about what happened, with Agnes, the fact that she tried to kill herself, and then they suspect that she's a double agent because they found out that she killed Maddox. So they suspect she's a double agent, which of course she is. And Picard is kind of like, disbelieving of that at first. They make Picard so ineffective. It's like his instincts are gone. Like he's always like two steps behind everybody else. And everybody always has to kind of like lead him and drag him to the truth. And in this situation, Raffi, she knows it. She knows exactly what's going on. She's putting it all together. And they have this sort of elaborate, contrived process by which Raffi figures out the whole thing about the Zhat Vash. She figures out that scene that we saw. She somehow figures that out. That basically that's what's going on. And the process by which she does that is so contrived and unbelievable to me. I mean, it's just pure Hollywood garbage. You know what I mean? It's like there's no like even like a little thread of a true investigative technique. And I do know something about that because I was in public safety for 20 years. And there's not even a hint of realism of how someone would find out all that information. It's just incredibly contrived. Now, while this is happening, Rios has reacted very weird to Soji. He's like, you can tell there's something there. He recognizes her and he basically goes into seclusion. Instead of just telling everybody that he recognizes her, which I thought was just dumb, why wouldn't he just tell everybody, hey, I know you. You know what I mean? I've seen you before. Well, what it turns out is we finally get to find out what happened to Rios' captain and why Rios left Starfleet. And again, it's very contrived because Raffi figures it out by using the different holograms that are basically, that's the broken pieces. They are the broken pieces of Rios, and she's assembling it. And again, it's incredibly contrived. It's incredibly contrived and silly, but Raphael figured out. She figures out everything, And so, yeah, I don't like this character. So that's what happens. Eventually, they find out what happened with Rios, and the reveal of what happened with Rios is that his captain was sent on a mission to basically make contact with two synths, and one of them was another Soji Daj, looked exactly like her, and she was with a male synth named Beautiful Flower. Beautiful Flower was the name of the male synth.
Yeah, I didn't
Pulitzer Prize winning writer. Pulitzer Prize winning writer. Beautiful Flower. Okay. So what ended up happening was, of course, Commodore O is already in Starfleet by this time. And instead of like a first contact mission, what she's decided is you need to kill these people. Okay, because they're synths, and Commodore O is part of the Super Tal Shiar, the Zat Vash. So she basically orders the assassination of these two people, and the captain's the one who does it. He doesn't have anybody else do it. And apparently the reason that he did it was because she threatened to basically kill his crew if he didn't do it. Okay. So now, of course, Rios doesn't know this. He doesn't know that Commodore O is Zat Vash. So he just thinks that Starfleet ordered this, and it disillusions him, but not before he has it out with his captain, and he makes his captain feel so bad about what he did, his captain kills himself. There's a lot of suicide stuff in this. There's a lot. There was even the line with Agnes where she says, "All I think about is suicide." It's like apparently that's all the writers think about is suicide. Everybody's committing suicide, Not a topic that should be taken lightly, okay, at all. Don't appreciate that, okay? I've had issues with depression. I still have issues with depression. I don't like the way they're treating that at all, okay? This is just something to throw out there and be shocking for them, And it's not even shocking anymore. It's contrived. You can see it coming a mile away. But apparently the captain killed himself. That disillusioned Rios. Now he finds out kind of the truth. They have that moment where he's like, hey, so maybe, Starfleet's not so bad after all. And of course, Picard has to say, no, they gave into fear. You know what I mean? Like, we can't even just have that moment where Rios says, Starfleet wasn't that bad. They were infiltrated. That's what happened. It's Commodore O. She's the one that's causing all these problems. Picard's like, no, Starfleet sucks. You know what I mean? I'm surprised he didn't actually say that,
Right. Right.
So that's kind of the big reveal there. And then the other thing, of course, is going on is we did have Seven. We did have Seven go ahead and rescue Elnor. I always want to say Elnor. So she saved him. And what ends up happening there is Seven decides that the only way that she can get rid of the Romulans is to reactivate the Borg. Because apparently most of the Borgs are not XBs. XBs are former Borg. Most of the Borg are still Borg. They're just in stasis because they're harvesting the parts, right? That's what the project's all about. Is they're harvesting
right,
the parts.
and reclaiming those that they can too. So they're not just they're harvesting the parts, but at the same point they're also trying to rehabilitate them, and they're kind of working their way through all of them that are on the cube. But there's quite a few of them that are apparently just in stasis.
Right. So they're still Borg. They're not XBs. That's the difference. So she decides that the only way that she can get rid of the Romulans, which, by the way, I'm kind of sitting there in a way kind of like, how did she get on the ship? And if she got on the ship so easily, why don't they just leave?
Yep.
You can get into our writer's room, too. It's like, why didn't she just leave? But anyway, she decides instead she's going to reactivate the Borg and assume the mantle of Borg Queen on the cube. And I was like, okay, that seems like a really bad plan. But okay, I guess that's where we're going with this. Because she even mentions by doing this, it's very dangerous because she may not want to come back. You know what I mean? She may not want to be an individual anymore. She may just become the queen and take over. So she ends up activating the Borg. At first, it doesn't work because the Zat Vash are a step ahead of her, and they actually start jettisoning the Borg. They actually start opening the airlocks. I think it's basically they take the shields down because the Borg cube's damaged, and I'm guessing they just turn the shields off and it sucks the Borg out, which that does make sense. But they're not the Romulans are not able to destroy all the Borg, and the Borg that are left start to rise up. I thought it was really silly because we have another scene where the Cersei Romulan goes ahead and she starts killing more XPs to the point that her gun breaks, which I thought was the stupidest thing I've ever seen. A disruptor and it breaks because she shot a few people. Just to show how many people she killed. She killed so many people, the disruptor broke. That's what that was meant to convey. I can just see it, a mile away what they're trying to do, and it's just so obvious and it's just so bad.
And
so
I hated that part because we're in spoilers. I hated that part where she was talking to her auntie or whatever, and she made that comment. She's like, "I would have made a great Borg," and then she rolled her eyes as she said the line, "Resistance is futile." I hated that. Don't disrespect one of the coolest lines from one of the greatest Star Trek villains of all time. Don't do that. Don't. That line should have been uttered by Seven when she reawoke the Borg and they were going to take the cube back, or that line, like I suggested last episode, which of course didn't come to be. It would have been nice if Hugh had used that line if they had actually tried to take the Borg cube back from the Romulans. But I really did not like her using that line in that way, because it just really felt, because of the rolling of the eyes, it felt really disrespectful. And I don't know. I get the
I think the writers are constantly rolling their eyes at Star Trek. That's what I feel like. So these are like their little in jokes to just show, man, this show, how cheesy that was. You know what I mean? Like they don't like anything, so they're just going to make fun of everything. I feel like that's what they're doing, And well, so she takes over the Borg cube, right? She takes it over. What I thought was really silly was, in terms of even their own continuity in the same episode, they killed the XBs with no problem. Okay, they just went in to start shooting them and kill them. They didn't even try to defend themselves. Once they become Borg again, suddenly now they're like zombies. Now they don't have the shields, but now they overwhelm the Zhat Vash. Why didn't she just shoot them again? It's like even their own continuity within the episode doesn't make any sense, because they're not fully Borgified. They don't have the shields. It's very clear they don't have the shields. They just are physically attacking now, like zombies. Not just like zombies. That's what the scene reminded me of. They sort of swarm Cersei Romulan, and they basically are able to overwhelm her, and then the Romulans escape in their ships. And that's pretty much all that happens there. Katie had a comment of Her Majesty, 7 of 9, tertiary adjunct of Unimatrix 0, 1, former wife of Chakotay and notorious half-Borg Fenris Ranger from the Delta Quadrant. Did I miss anything? Yeah, so anyway, we get back on the ship. That's where we get the cringeworthy line, because now the Agnes has decided that killing was bad and murder's wrong, and so she's forgiven. And she has this wonderful moment with Soji where she says, "Oh, you're thirsty. You get thirsty and you cry," and that's her bonding moment. And now she doesn't want to kill Soji anymore, because that was her mission, was to kill Soji. So now she loves Soji. That was just so unconvincing. I think of my dad being like an engineer, and the questions my dad would ask like an actual android. You know what I mean? And the way that he would act with an actual android, because my dad loved robotics, and it was sort of like a hobby of his as an engineer. And there's no way he would be doing stupid dialogue like that. You know what I mean? Those are not the questions that he would be asking. And the other thing is, she's biological, and she knows that. So she's asking about her being thirsty and she's biological. She's not fully synthetic. She's actually biological. The only thing synthetic is the brain. She has a positronic brain. She's a cyborg, basically. She's not really even like a quote unquote synth. She's a cyborg. It's like Terminator. It's like inside is a robot, but outside it's real flesh. You know what I mean? And she's asking, again, cringeworthy dialogue. And then Soji takes over the ship and decides to go home. And I think that's it, right? That's pretty much it.
Pretty much.
So
let's
try to fix this mess, Dave.
Well, here, let me throw out a couple things I did like. I I kind of liked that bit with Seven where she decided to kind of go, like, become the queen, like on that cube in that moment in time. I kind of liked that idea, but I just hated the way they executed it because, if she had reawoken the Borg and the Borg had actually taken that cube back from the Romulans, like when they opened the airlock and they were getting sucked out into space, and that was hard to watch. I
Yeah.
mean, and it's just because I don't like the way that they're treating classic Trek. I don't like it.